Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. Today's Torah study is sponsored by Old City Permits, a student of ours from Hollywood, Florida. We're delighted to have your support. Thank you for joining us here today. And today we're going to talk about drowning in the chaos of life. Today we're going to talk about how to cope through the chaos of life. There are so many headaches. You know, somebody dropped a comment the other day where several rabbis here in the congregation, and somebody dropped a comment. I'm going to assume that he meant it in jest, that some of the rabbis might not be as punctual as some of the non-rabbis here to the services. And, I hope that it was a joke, because if you had any idea what it means for one of us to get out of the door in the morning, oops, this one hasn't changed his diaper. Oops, this one is not having it for that shoe, can't find the other shoe. Now we're going to do a search and rescue mission throughout the house, and we're going to venture into some of the dark territories of the home in order to search for the other shoe, right? This one's having a tantrum, so it's not moving out of bed. Just to get out of the house in the morning is often a Herculean achievement. And when it comes to other people's problems, most of the time you have absolutely no idea what they're going through. There's a man in our shul, for him to show up every day is like a miracle. His father took his own life. His father took his own life from chaos, from stress, from anxiety, from pressure. Every time I see him, I give him a hug because I'm grateful to see him. I can only imagine. I cannot understand, but I can only imagine how pressurizing that must be for him to have that kind of genetic disposition to not know how to cope. So what then are we supposed to do when it comes to coping? What kind of timeless wisdom does the Torah have to share with us as to how to manage? As always, the weekly Torah portion holds the secrets to whatever crises we're struggling with at this time. Whatever challenges, whatever struggles, whatever issues are going on in your life, you have to look into the weekly Torah portion to find those answers. As the Alter Rebbe tells us, the founder of Chabad, the first Rebbe of Chabad, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, as we have to live with the times. Living with the times means to open the Chumash, look at the weekly Torah portion. The Chitas, the daily Chumash, is not just the portion that we happen to read today. It's the DNA code. It's the HTML of the day, which means what is in the Torah is what sets the reality, not the other way around. It's not the reality that has to look into Torah. It's actually the Torah that creates the reality. Because remember, when God created the world, God looked into the Torah, and the Torah became the blueprints of creation. In exactly the same way, if today's Torah portion is the second portion of the portion of Noach, remember there's 7 aliyahs on a Shabbos corresponding to the 7 days of the week. On the first day of the week, you read the first aliyah with Rashi's commentary. The second day, you read the second aliyah with Rashi's commentary, and so on and so forth, until on Shabbos you finish the final aliyah, each day living with that day's Torah portion. So when we look into today's Torah portion, we find the secrets, the key to helping us cope with the chaos in our lives. I can speak for myself here today, where I'm coming out of a month of no work, or an inability to get much done, because in the past month we've only had Friday, Shabbos, and Sunday on repeat mode. There's been no Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays, because we've had the regular weekends, Friday, Shabbos, Sunday, and then the Yontovs were on Tuesdays. We had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which was like Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, and then the day after Yom Tov. So it was very, very difficult to get anything done. So today we're facing this tsunami of responsibility, as the phone calls, the emails, the obligations, the responsibilities, the marketing, the events, whatever's out there, it's just sort of coming to a bottleneck, and it is absolutely pressurizing. It's insane. It's good, thank God. God doesn't give us more than we can handle. The question is, how do we handle? Welcome, Prima from Australia, and Rochelle from Dubai. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So, the Torah tells us that this week's Torah portion, we deal with a story that sounds so sounds like a fantasy. It sounds like a fairy tale. That's the word. The story of Noah and the flood. That's this week's Torah portion. So Noah is the 10th generation since Adam, and the people are corrupt. You know, the word corrupt in Hebrew is Hamas. The word Hamas means corruption. It appears in the Torah portion today several times. And God notices that the land is filled with Hamas. So what he does is that he decides to destroy the world because the world cannot continue with Hamas. So what happens then is that he brings a flood upon the earth, and the waters come from two different directions. They come from above like rain, but they also come from the well springs of below. There's waters from above and the waters from below. This flood is not just a fairy tale legend story that's of an event that happened allegedly 4,000 years ago. This is actually the story of our lives. The flood is the overwhelming sense of duty, obligation, and responsibility that you feel. By the way, life didn't become any easier with the invention of the smartphone, making us available 24/7 to any human being upon the face of the earth who decides that he wants to reach my attention right now, including that maniacal Meshuggah who decided that I need a $63,000 loan and has called me 12,000 times over the past 30 days. Have you been receiving these calls?
Oh, I get them all the time.
Yeah. It's absolutely crazy. And you sometimes when you make the mistake to answer the call,
yeah,
and they put you through to this, robocall, and you're like, please, can I speak to a human being? And you beg them, please, can you do me a favor? I really do not want your loan. Please, can you remove me from your list? And like, oh, sure, absolutely. Next thing you know, 5 minutes later, you get another phone call. It's like, you don't want to answer the phone anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but they have 15,000 lines, and you couldn't. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So the cell phones have become a source of stress, of anxiety, the antithesis of serenity, right? When you're trying to relax and you look into social media and you see how wonderful, how perfect the lives of your colleagues are, right? Only you are eating, yesterday's leftovers, but everybody else is just dining in Parisian cafes, right? They're driving the fancy cars. They're living the life, right? It is a source of great stress and anxiety. We've got floods coming from every single direction. Generally speaking, the Rebbe differentiates. The Rebbe calls it Tiradai Saparnasa. The word Tiradai means like the distractions or the distractions of making a living. The distractions of making a living, of survival. The distractions of survival. Now, there's different kinds of distractions of survival. There are those that come from below, and there are those that come from above. Those that come from below are the ordinary day-to-day stresses. Keeping up with your clients, keeping up with your competitors, research and development departments, your marketing deadlines, right? Your deliverables. This is the headaches they come from below, right? Making sure you got the right permits, making sure that you've you checked off the right places, you're making payroll, all that kind of stuff. Those are the headaches that come from below. This is the waters that emerge from the bottom up. But then you have waters that come from above. And what are those? Those are more refined headaches in our lives. Those are the headaches that involve like communal responsibilities. Shh. People think that if you don't see them, you can't hear them. It's an amazing phenomenon. But the headaches that come from above are the ones that are much more sensitized, much more refined. Those are the headaches, for example, that are associated with communal responsibilities and obligations, where you're not just dealing with the details, you're dealing with much greater obligations. I'm just trying to think of an example of that. Perhaps it might be when you're counseling someone. When you're counseling someone, and to be able to say the right thing to them. Or if somebody's going through a crisis, and to empathize with them and to shepherd them through that process. That's much more of an elevated headache than whether you paid your property taxes, right? Or if you paid your credit card bill in time, right? So those are the two headaches that come: the ones from above and the ones from below. And they're two general headaches, and you can apply them to your own personal life. Whether you're running the household, and if you paid your HOA fees versus if your children are carrying your legacy. Those would be the higher headaches in your life. And it's very stressful. It's very stressful. This idea that life is supposed to be a beach and you're supposed to just relax with your life is actually a misnomer. We were placed in this world in order to... Yes?
With the floods with Noah, I know God's almighty, but was he inconsolable that the floods, that it rained so much that he was so upset that was the floods, or are
you asking me if God was upset about the flood?
No, I'm more asking if God, that the flood is because he's so sad that
you mean it was tears?
The tears.
God doesn't have tears.
Oh.
No, no, I don't think it was tears. God doesn't have tears. I think that's more Greek mythological application. We don't believe in that.
Okay.
So, anyways, back to what I was saying. What was I saying? I don't remember. The average person looks at their phone every 47 seconds. Wow. Noah. Blue light is the most addictive substance on the planet. Blue light. Is that the blue light from the phone you're probably talking about, right? Very, very interesting. Social media is also misleading and a big distraction. Yeah, we think that we're so connected, but you're really disconnected from everywhere. You're disconnected from your kids. You're disconnected from your spouse. You're disconnected from your friends. Because you're living in your La La Land echo chamber, thinking that you have so many friends, you really have nobody. You heard about the guy who died. He thought he was going to have 1,000 people at his funeral. Nobody showed up. He had 1,000 friends on Facebook. Nobody came. All right. So how do you tell? When you have, how do you differentiate between the headaches from above, the more sensitized headaches, and the ones from below? Either way, they're distracting. Anyways, what's the solution? How do you manage? How do you cope? It's the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, born in 1698, who opens the door for us to managing our lives with one magnificent revelation. He says, okay, so the flood is the headaches. But how do you manage the flood? You got to be like Noah. What did Noah do?
An ark.
He built an ark. And the word ark in Hebrew is what? Anybody remember the word ark in Hebrew? Teva, T-E-V-A. T-E-V-A, which is a bit of an unusual name for a boat. A boat is an oniyah or a sirah. These are different words for boats, yachts, boats. But when it comes to this ark, it's an interesting word. It's a teva. Teva means a box. That's what the word box is, like what Moses. When Moses was put into the river Nile, he was put into a teva, right? Which is, again, it's not a boat. It was a basket, but it was a tarred basket, a floating basket.
Yeah,
so
pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
Teva, oh, no, that's a little different, Mark. That's a little different, because Teva Pharmaceutical is not Teva, it's Teva. It's actually a different letter. The first letter is not a taf, it's a tet, because in the case of the pharmaceuticals, Teva means nature. It's a beautiful name for a pharmaceutical company, which means nature, Teva. But in this context, with the taf, it means box. But the Baal Shem Tov's revelation is that the word Teva also means word. Word. W-O-R-D. And therefore, the Baal Shem Tov concludes and he says that if you want to survive the vicissitudes of life, the endless flowing streams of life, the way to do that is to find refuge in the word. Which word?
Torah.
The word of Torah. Enter into the words of Torah. Allow the words of Torah to envelop you, to embrace you, to uplift you, and they will float your boat. This is the secret. This is the novelty. This is the sensational revelation that the Torah is teaching us in this week's Torah portion. The chaos is going to happen. That is the cost of being in this world. There is no such thing. Do you know anybody that has no headaches? Surely Elon Musk couldn't possibly have any headaches. Said nobody ever, because only the naive would think that, right? Because small company, small problems, big company, big problems, right? Every single person you can think of has a competitor. BMW, Mercedes, Apple, Samsung, United States, China, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, well, go figure, right? Every single entity, every single company has a competitor. If you have a passion, if you have a dream, there will inevitably be someone who's trying to block your way. This is the name of the game. It's the nature of reality. So the fact that there's a flood is not surprising. The question is, do you know how to manage? In order to manage, it's counterintuitive. The Torah is teaching us, enter into the word of Torah, and then you will find refuge. Then you will be safe. Now, most people think that I'm too busy to study Torah. I don't have time to go to shul. I need to go to work. I need to check my email the first thing when I wake up in the morning. Because if I don't check my email in the morning, you know what's going to happen? If I don't check my email first thing in the morning, what's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. But if you don't check your email in the morning, you think that the world is going to come to a screeching halt. It's not going to come to a screeching halt. Nothing's going to happen if you don't even look at your email before 9 a.m. I haven't looked at my email today, folks. Been up for 3 hours. I haven't looked at my email. I'm not interested. I'll look at it later when I'm ready. Because what I have been doing is being busy with Torah. This is my boat. If I'm so busy swimming in the flood, how am I going to keep my family safe? I need to build my boat for this day, for the 28th day of Tishrei, for the 19th, the 20th of October today, 20th of October?
20th of October.
For the 20th of October, I know there's a flood, but the question is, did you build a boat? And to do that, you need to surround yourself with Torah. When a Jew opens his eyes in the morning and he says, Modani lefanecha, I'm grateful to you, O living in an eternal King. Right? When he opens his eyes and he says the morning blessings in the morning, and he doesn't rush to solve all the issues in the Middle East, right? But rather what he does is that he envelops himself and immerses himself in the word of Torah. He's now entered into the boat. He's now Noah, who's able to float his boat throughout the chaos, throughout the anarchy, throughout the world, which is drowning, the world being destroyed. He is able to ride the waves, to surf the waves, as he realizes that he has the tool, the proper tool, in order to manage his way. It's interesting that in today's Yom, 28th of Tishrei, the Rebbe points out to us, and it's interesting, it doesn't really fit with today's Torah portion. It seems like it's borrowed from a Torah portion at the end of Vayikra. It says, if you walk in my statutes, and you fulfill my mitzvahs, I will give you your reins in their times. Right? That's the verse from the end of Leviticus. So, and what it means is, if you toil in the study of Torah, and if you engage in my mitzvahs, then you will have the prosperity that you seek. That's what it says in the Torah. Now, it doesn't really fit into today's Hayom Yom, but should have been at the end of the summer, or in the middle of the summer when we read that Torah portion. But I believe that the reason why it appears over here is because it's everything to do with that Torah portion. The definition of the flood, I want you to read the flood this week, folks. As you study the Torah portion this week, as you read about the flood, instead of reading it as a story of a deluge that happened to people that we never met 3,500, 4,000 years ago, I want you to think of it in the present tense. I want you to think about it as the overwhelming influx of your mail, the overwhelming tidal wave, which is your email inbox. I want you to think of all the people that are upset with you, that you haven't gotten back to them, that you haven't reached out to them. Those people that sit stewing by the phone, waiting for you to call, those kind of people. There's always people like that in our lives. I want you to think about all the headaches in your life, and that is the flood about which we're talking about today. And the way that you manage it is by being Noah. And that's why the Hayom Yom tells us that the only way for you to experience the prosperity that you seek, the rains in their time, the proper, healthy, good rains, not the drowning rains, is by toiling in the study of Torah and by observing the mitzvahs, because when we recognize that the blessings and the curses all come from God Almighty, when we have the courage to embrace the fact that there aren't two gods, there's only one God. There's not a God of good and a God of bad. That's idolatry. That every single thing that happens to us comes from the same God, and that effectively the bad stuff that happens to us is just a test. It's just a test to see if we're going to lose our focus. Right? Will we lose our focus and and prioritize the medium, or will we always remember the source? Right? So when somebody makes you angry, are you going to attribute power to that person, or will you remember, like King David remembered, that the person that's making me angry is just nothing more, nothing less than an agent of God here to test me? Right? And if we can live our lives in that way, then we'll always remember the source of our blessing, the source of our prosperity always comes from God Almighty. And therefore, we should always know where to find refuge, where to find our coping mechanisms by climbing into the boat, by climbing into the word of Torah. But remember that Noah enters into the ark not alone. He's not a solo practitioner. He's commanded by God to build this ark over 120 years. Right? He was like a Florida contractor.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Florida contractors are very reliable. When they say they're going to finish the job, they mean it, and there's no need to remind them every 5 years. Right? This is Noah. This is Noah. It takes him 120 years to build the boat. Why? Because God wanted him to influence his environment. Now, he happened to not have been very influential. He wasn't very good at influencing his neighbors and friends, but you have to give him credit. He did influence his wife, Da'amah, and his 3 sons and 3 daughters-in-law. So he did get a small crowd. He got his 6 kids and his wife and himself. That's a total of 8. So he did manage to get 8 people, including himself, influenced to the right side, right? And that the Torah is explicit to tell us that go into the ark, you and your children and your wife and your daughters-in-law. So the Torah is specific that you're not supposed to go in there yourself, because we too are supposed to do the same. We're supposed to enter the boat. We're supposed to enter into the Torah, not only as into our own silos, but by actually influencing our friends. And that's why, friends, I want to encourage you to always have a word of Torah available. Because how can you bring your neighbor into the boat? What are you going to do? You're going to schlep them into shul? They're not coming into shul. Yeah. What you want to do is you always want to make sure that every single week you have a little pearl of Torah wisdom that you've grasped, that you've owned, that you can share at a whim, right? So, for example, imagine you take this idea that we learned today. When somebody tells you, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, you know what's going on, there's a political tsunami and I can't deal with the war in Ukraine and the war and the ceasefire in Israel, I don't even understand it, and Trump shmup, and this one and that one and the other one, and everybody's all stressed out, and you say to them, that's today's Torah portion. Imagine you throw that at them, you're like, what do you mean it's today's Torah portion? And you say, yeah, today's Torah portion tells you how to cope with your chaos. What? Now you got their attention. It's very simple. You tell them the boat, and the word boat is teva, and teva means a word of Torah, Baal Shem Tov. Whoa, right? You just gave them a raft. You just threw them a ring, a life ring, to be able to give them the courage to be able to survive. Yeah.
Noah survived because he locked himself in the boat.
Yeah.
The boat was closed.
Yeah.
That's how he survived. You're not suggesting that we lock ourselves up in Torah, that we stay in a shtetl somewhere, like some of the sects. All we do is study Torah. I mean, we have to come out of the boat.
So I wouldn't say that you have to sequester yourself, but I do think that you should not give power to the flood to overwhelm you. In other words, Noah was ready at a moment's notice as soon as the flood subsided to emerge, and he was anxious to leave. He was not sticking around over there. So whilst all the chaos was being thrown at him, right? Whilst he was drowning in his financial obligations and navigating his business and dealing with national elections and all the other chaos in his life, he didn't allow that to own him. He was safe in his own environment, floating his boat. As soon as the deluge subsided, he was able to emerge and come out to the world. So you're right. It's not about hiding yourself away from the world, but it is about not giving power to the chaos in your life to overwhelm you. Don't drown. Stay dry. All right. Let's wrap it up with that. Have a great day, everybody. Shalom, and spread the light. Float your boat.